Welcome to CED Office Hour Live. Hi, welcome to the March 21st, 2024 edition of CED Office Hour Live, where the Community and Economic Development team here at the at Central State University, in the Extension Department, um, bring to you and we discuss all things CED. And so before we get started, I always like to kind of give our baseline definition of what CED is, right? It's like diversity. It touches on everything, and you can talk to 10 different people and get 10 different answers. So we're going to kind of give you the baseline and foundation of what we work from in that space, and then we'll go from there. So basically, community and economic development is looks at how we live, work, play, thrive, and navigate through all of those spaces. And on one end of the spectrum is the economic development side, which is your physical infrastructure, physical planning, comprehensive planning, building of highways, building of public art spaces, walkways, bikeways, buildings, affordable housing, all those kind of physical things. On the other end of the spectrum is the people development of that spectrum. And the people development is personal and professional development, access, equity, right? Access to the things so that you can have a good quality of life, things that'll help you level up, increase your self sufficiency, education, all of those kind of things. And then the connector between the two in the middle are organizations such as our guest today, Uptown Consortium, us here at Central State University, government agencies, businesses that kind of connect the people to the physical places and make the world go round. So as CED professionals, we look at that whole spectrum and based on our individual and collective talents, bandwidth, and knowledge base, we say, hey, where can we plug and play so that we can make an improvement, whether it's a process improvement, connecting people, or whatever the need is for that community or community group or individual. And so that's how we work. And we work with groups. So I always say we like to work ourselves out of a job because it's not for us to be for you to be dependent on us from here on out. It's for us to help you through whatever that next project or goal is. And then once you get there, we back off because we've given you the tools to sustain and maintain it and grow it. And when you have a new idea, then you come back to us. So we want to be your go-to people, right? You come back to us and say, okay, this is the next thing I'm thinking of, and we start that process all over. That's kind of our value system on how we work, and just connecting people so that we can build a capacity of residents and businesses and individuals throughout the state of Ohio. And so I'd always like to make sure that team members that have logged on introduce themselves. So we'll start with you, Eric, and then you, uh, Ambrose.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Amber, and really looking forward to being here and learning from you, Beth. And my name is Eric Smith, and I'm the Program Extension Associate for CED, the Community Economic Development Unit here at Central State Extension, and just support the work based out of Northwest Ohio, south of Toledo, but supporting the work statewide.
All right. Good afternoon. Ambrose Moses, Extension Educator in CED. And as always, glad to be here. I'm looking forward to our discussion and to hearing what Beth is going to share with us today.
Awesome, awesome. So I want to give kind of a Beth and I go way back. She's one of the reasons why I chose community economic development as a profession. I started out at the City of Cincinnati as an intern, and first of all, it's a male-dominated field. So when you see a woman that's in there and she's making moves and she bossing people around and getting things done, um, I saw her balance communicating with the public and internally which I call that translators. She was an effective translator because a lot of times people want the same goals, but they're speaking different languages, and then the anxiety and the animosity goes up. And it's like, hey guys, you all are saying the same thing. Let me translate for you, right? So I've seen her do that and then turn around and go into another meeting and work with developers and say, this is what the community wants and this is what we're going to do. So how are you going to make it happen? Right. And so I've always admired her. And whenever I had a chance to work up under her for any special projects, then I jumped at it. So I got to be on some of those developer committees, and other interns would be like, well, why are you doing that? I said, you don't know what you're missing. That's where all the action is, right? So, so flash forward to now. She has since left this. Both of us left the city of Cincinnati, but she now runs Uptown Consortium, and so we are going to be focusing on the works of Uptown Consortium. She has been over 20 years now. Time flies when you're having
Time
fun.
does fly. Yeah.
And continuously transforming. Their focus areas of development are basically around the University of Cincinnati, where the business district down to the business district of the inner city downtown. So they started that area up the hill around UC area. Um, and probably what about 3-4 mile radius, something like that, encompassing 5 different communities. They all have very different traits. So once again, she had to do a lot of translation as they have completed different development projects. So Beth, I'd like to turn it over to you. And like I said, this is conversation format. So people may, any of us can jump in at any time. This is a space that's okay to interrupt, okay?
Yeah.
And ask a question and give a comment. So we're just going to flow like that. And I know you have a couple slides you like to share. And so at any time, feel free to share your screen to do so. But first, before you get to that formal part, can you just tell us a little bit about, I guess my question for you would be all the things that you learned working in the city government, and then you kind of went to this quasi-governmental type of structure. How have the things that you learned and did at the city help leverage that kind of jumpstart of Uptown Consortium? And then we'll start from there.
Okay, well, thank you, Amber. And I think I'm going to blush by that introduction. My goodness. But I really do appreciate your kind words. And I enjoyed working with you all those years ago. And I'm glad we've been able to keep in touch. And you're doing great things. And I like to watch your career as well. So, and it's so nice to be here and talk about economic and community development. I spent 10 years with the City of Cincinnati, and then I left, and then Amber is correct. I went to the Uptown Consortium a few stops before that, but I've been here for the last 14 plus years, a little bit longer because I was at the university for a short tenure as well. But I think Amber really said it best. The skill that I picked up the best when I worked at the city was translating. I hadn't quite thought of it as that word, but now she's given me a better description than I could have ever come up with. But I think that's right. I think what I took away from that experience was a heart for the community and wanting to do right by people. And understanding some of the needs and getting to know community people. I've always carried that with me. It was a responsibility as a city employee that's what we needed to do and represent citizens. And then I try to bring that same sensitivity to everything I do here at the consortium. And it is a lot of balancing, quite frankly. You have developers. God love them. We all need them, but they're out to make a profit and they want to get in, get out, and make their money. And but we couldn't do a lot of this great work without them. And then I have the privilege of working for anchor institutions here in Uptown that really they do tremendous work in healthcare and educating people. So I'm sort of in the middle of those two worlds, the private sector and the public sector. Our members are public sector organizations, but they do different things. They save lives and educate people. So we are working in that space in between the neighborhoods and the citizens here in Uptown and that. We also interact a lot with the City of Cincinnati, as you can imagine. So it's, yeah, I guess I do a lot of translating. I guess that's what it is.
Okay, so can you tell us exactly what Uptown Consortium is and why it was started and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. So the consortium, let's see, I believe it's in 2004, around that time frame. The leaders of the institutions, including the University of Cincinnati and Children's Hospital and others, came together and they realized they could cooperate and form an organization that could improve and reinvest in the community around all their campuses. So even then, it was with an eye towards attracting the best talent that they need in order to provide the best healthcare and the best teachers. And so that was really the impetus behind it. And the area around Uptown was really suffering from a lot of disinvestment. And there were a lot of dilapidated buildings. It was hard to make any progress in a big way, in a coordinated way. So they stepped up, they formed the Uptown Consortium and capitalized us with $36 million of funds that the organization was able to do property acquisitions with and planning work and investing in the community. So that was really the beginning, the genesis of the organization. Since that time, we've accomplished a lot of our early objectives, and some of the areas we have redeveloped, and now everyone forgets what they look like in 2004 and 2005. And now we're working on a different area. You know, the work is never finished, but as Amber said, you referenced trying to work yourself out of a job. That's really the end goal, right? But you know, there's a lot of work to do in the communities of Uptown.
So one of the can you talk about some of the early projects? So with that initial investment, you all bought up a lot of properties, and to give you a little bit backdrop, how should I say, it's 5 different neighborhoods,
Right.
5 different cultures in the neighborhoods. They have all different feels in it, but you could walk from one neighborhood to the other, right?
Right.
But they surrounded all of the University of Cincinnati. Also in the area, Beth mentioned, were the hospitals. So you had Jewish Hospital, you had Christ Hospital, you had University Hospital at the time, which is now UC Health. You had Jewish Hospital, you had the Shriners Hospital, you had the Ronald McDonald House, and you
Right.
had Children's Hospital. In addition, you had the Federal Environmental Protection Agency, which is EPA, and the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. And during that time, the EPA and NIOSH were also looking at how can they consolidate their labs in areas throughout the city to be closer to UC because they do so much research work. UC, University of Cincinnati, is a research hospital. And then on the other side, you have a lot of housing. A lot of this housing is the first ring of neighborhoods once, back in the 1800s when the city started expanding. So a lot of these buildings are older buildings, and some of them had sat vacant for many years or dilapidated. And then you also have the influx of UC growing its student population beyond the boundaries of campus. So they have still to this day, have a growing housing need. So I just want to kind of give you the feel of
Right.
the area that she is referring to. So can you talk about some of the first kind of projects that you all initiated?
Yeah, some of the first projects that we did was near the university, and it was an area that is typical of university areas, a lot of bars, restaurants, a lot of rundown buildings, to be honest with you. The streetscape wasn't good. You know, you could just go on and on. There was some crime that was occurring, and we were able to go in and buy a portfolio of properties from a pre-existing community development organization that was really going out of business. And so we were able to take over their portfolio. And what we did was get a lot of those properties redeveloped. So for instance, we were instrumental in getting the existing Kroger store to expand and reinvest in the store. We did a hotel at the other end of the street, and then we got some of the smaller portfolio properties into the hands of the private developers who were able to do housing, much of it student housing, because it's just really one street over from the university, and then ground floor retail. We were able to work with the city and convince them to make some significant improvements in streetscape and burying underground utilities, things like that. So the street began to turn around and the private sector started jumping in. And that's when our work recedes in the background. We like to go in and be an early investor and turn things around when the private sector won't. And then once the private sector comes in, then we pull out and go to a different area that needs investment. So we take on, like for instance, we bought a really problem property that had seen drug overdoses inside, and it was a restaurant bar, so forth. We were able to buy that because we were willing to pay, honestly, the ridiculous amount of money that the owner wanted. We were able to do that when no private sector person could make that work. So that's the benefit of having a nonprofit in there that's able to do that. And once we did that, that's when the private developers and business owners started coming back. So then we did another area around the other side of the university, similar work. The other tool that we have that's been really important, not only the member capital that pays for our operating expenses and allows us to invest in property and so forth, but we also are a recipient of New Markets tax credits. And that's a federal tax credit program, and that's just been invaluable to us. And just recently, we were successful in getting 2 back-to-back allocations, which is really difficult to do because you have to compete nationally for these credits. So we are very excited about that. And so we've made a lot of investments to spur development. And also now we're at a point where we're able to use the credits to invest in some great health and medical related projects. So for instance, we just recently, within the last month or so, put credits into the UC Blood Cancer Healing Center, which will just be tremendous for people suffering from blood cancers. It's a new facility. So we're able to do those kind of items too because of the new market. So it's beyond, the real estate reinvestment that we do. So those were some of our early projects, just a sprinkling of what we've done.
And for the new market tax credit, it's an understatement when you say that it's rare to get, because on average, they have over 500-600 applications each year, and they might only fund 100. So it's very highly competitive, and it's everything from local governments, community development corps, even banks will submit for that funding. But it is geared towards making it feasible to really revitalize an area like it should. So it's not hodgepodge, it's very coordinated, and it's and then you can have competitive deals, right? So your pricing is competitive, right, instead of being way up here with those incentives that are derived from the new market tax credit program. So just wanted to point out, congratulations on even getting more than once.
Thank you.
Yeah. Those are very large technical applications. I had to grade those before, so.
Woo. Yeah. It's a bear.
Because I know how it was great.
Yeah, it's a bear, and we were just thrilled that we got another allocation last year. So.
Wow, that's really, really impressive. The work that you've been doing. What is the involvement of the small businesses or local mom and pop type shops or startups? Have they been involved in some of this development as well, or is it just big developers?
Well, for some of our larger land holdings, we typically work with some of the bigger developments, just the nature of the project. But one thing that we've done, especially earlier, maybe the first 10 years of the consortium, we did a lot of placing small commercial uses and supporting them in the business districts. Because as Amber said, we have 5 neighborhoods and they each have their own business district as well. And so for instance, we were able on one of the areas to bring in a pizza place. We've invested in projects that we put new market tax credits in, and then that allowed the developer to offer below market rent to some local restaurants to come in, filling a gap that there may not be restaurants in that particular neighborhood. So that was important. We've also done, in addition to all the real estate items, we've also supported some of our business districts with retail studies that we funded for one of our communities in Clifton that Amber's familiar with. They had a lot of vacancies in their business district, and so we brought in a retail leasing consultant in and worked with the community and got them to think a little differently and more strategically, and so that's led to good results over the years. So we do a variety of tactics depending on the situation.
Okay, excellent.
And Eric, you had a question?
I did. I just got to thinking about people, I'm already hearing communities like, they're thinking, they're wondering, okay, that's great. How did you get that? What was it, 37 million? How'd you get seated with that, right? Where's that money coming from? How'd you leverage that?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting story because that was we call it our first loan pool, that the members lent us money. It was long-term favorable rates. That was almost 37 million. And we were able, at that time, no one does it this way anymore, but we were able to create a new market tax credit pool by putting credits with it. And so the pool ended up being 50-some million, 52 or something. And so that leveraged the initial member investment. Since that time, to our institution's credit, they've allowed us, as those loans get repaid over the years, they allow us to reinvest those proceeds in. And then in 2016, about that time frame, they did a second capital infusion and gave us collectively among the 4 major institutions, gave us $20 million to acquire property around a new interchange at 71. So that was really the funding. Without the funding from our member institutions, we wouldn't be very far along, to be honest with you. It was significant.
And those member institutions, are they the same, the anchor institutions that are in those areas?
Yes.
They
yes.
just didn't feel like they had the expertise to do the development work, or they didn't have but they wanted somebody to do it, and so they funded you. Okay.
That's right. And it's not all the institutions. We have 4 members, but there are more anchor institutions, and we're always trying to get people to join. But that's a work in progress.
Yep. So at that interchange that she's referring to, that was named the Martin Luther King exit off of Interstate 71. And so one of the things that it did was it relieved the traffic congestion at the next exit, which is, these exits are probably only maybe 3/4 of a mile apart, roughly.
Right.
But they both service the same areas. So instead of everyone getting clogged up at that one, now it really dispersed the traffic. And it even helped with the development and widening of Reading Road, which up by campus is State Route 42. So it turns into the state route and then it goes by campus. Beth, it's Reading Road.
Yeah.
And it is widened Reading Road, so they can even the Reading Road can accommodate the traffic from both exits. because both exits will cross over, or a lot of the traffic will turn onto Reading Road to get to those major institutions and surrounding businesses. So I think that that was very good with that. And I know Alicia Reese had, who's now our commissioner, but then she was a state rep, really worked hard to get that done. But you had eminent domain that occurred around that exit as well. And to Beth's point, it's being developed as we speak. The University of Cincinnati has their innovation center in the area. Another major, used to be Sears Roebuck storefront, has become a hub of the area, and there's other, which spearheads other development. So would you like to speak on that and that comprehensive plan for the area, because the hotels and everything else that are going on?
Yeah, and I could share some slides if that would be
Okay.
helpful, because
Sure.
I speak better if I have something to point to be honest with you. Let me see if I,
You're translating.
yeah, and I'm gonna,
Yes.
whoops, I hope I didn't hit something. I'm going to skip through some of this, but this is a map that might be kind of interesting. Uptown is shaded in the color here, and you can see how close we are to downtown, the central business district. And we straddle a large area between I-71 and I-75. So that gives you a little context. And then the 5 neighborhoods are labeled there. And so we do cover a lot of area. And what we do is just be really strategic in what we focus on. So I'm going to skip. These are just a few before pictures of the area around campus and the hospitals. And this is some of our work using New Markets tax credits and some other member capital and so forth. So people tend to forget about this because they're driving around looking at this now. So I like to show those before and after pictures. But one thing before I show the pictures of the interchange development is this is very important to us that we engaged Web Ventures, which is an economic inclusion consulting team that has really been at our side, you know, for the last 5 or 6 years when we started working on the interchange area, because we didn't want to just do an interchange and do private development around it. We really wanted to make sure we brought the neighborhood with us and the minority community and women along with us. So Web Ventures, they have done a tremendous job in working with developers and making sure we have a robust economic inclusion goals, and they hold the developers' feet to the fire, which is the important piece to it, honestly. So there's our new market tax credits and just a few things that we've done with them that we're pretty proud of. It's a variety of projects, and we have more projects coming online, hopefully this year, that we're going to invest in. But what Amber was teeing up was this area around the new interchange at I-71 and MLK. And it's so rare to get a new urban interchange that we wanted to make sure that we came up with a community plan where everyone felt like they could benefit and be a part of. And we didn't want to just get people just into the institutions or have developers, a developer free for all where things get built and property gets built. We really wanted to be thoughtful. And so we convened, it was probably about 35 people on a steering committee that helped us formulate the MLK Reading Road Vision Plan, which is what Amber referenced. And what we all landed on is that we wanted a mix of uses. We think it's a knowledge community that would make best sense here. We don't want to compete against the neighborhood business districts and draw away from them, but we want to add to it. And so some of our planning work revolves here. This is the new interchange, and then also Burnett Avenue, which I'll touch on as well. So using member capital, we were able to jump in and secure ownership of most of this land around the new interchange. So roughly about 45 acres that we were able to control. And I'll just underscore the importance of site control, because if you don't have site control, you can't implement the vision and the community plans that you want to. So we were very fortunate that our members provided us the funds to do that. So we've been working on that. We also own land over here by our Children's Hospital and Ronald McDonald House that we're working on more neighborhood scale development. The scale over here at the interchange will be larger scale, and we're embarking on 2 very different kinds of development. So this is the area, and this speaks to this is Burnett Avenue, and this speaks to what Amber was saying, you know, the old houses, the neighborhood fabric. But yet look how close, if I can use my cursor, this new or this land holdings that we have is here, how close it is to the major institutions. So we're trying to build back the fabric of that community. And quite frankly, when we bought property there years ago, they were still recovering from some of the conditions from the 1960s riots, for goodness sakes. And so it's been a long way. Avondale, which is the community that this is located in, is really on the way back now. And you've already listened to Russ Hairston, and he's doing a tremendous job leading the Avondale Development Corporation. They're doing a lot of great things there. And so I would say the Avondale today is just poised for a really bright future. So we're partnering with Steiner, which you all might be familiar with. Steiner did Easton in the Columbus area to do a real thoughtful mixed use project with residential housing above and commercial on the ground floor. And Steiner is very committed to bringing in small businesses that really work and are needed in the neighborhood, you know, rather than just filling it up with anything that they can get a lease for. So it's taken us a little longer, but we want to do this right because we feel we owe it to the Avondale neighborhood to get this right. So this is the big new interchange that was built. And so you can see the scale of it covers a lot of land. To the upper right, that's the area that we were able to purchase. And then on the east side of the interchange, this is looking south, is a whole other residential neighborhood that we're not active in, but it is equally important to the overall vision of the area. So as I mentioned before, we were able to acquire about 45 acres, but our member institutions control additional acres. So we really have about 65 acres to redevelop and in a thoughtful way. This is the land use plan, site plan that we work from. And you'll see here is the new interchange, the southbound ramp. And so the access is just unparalleled, really. And so it gives us a tremendous opportunity to bring jobs and investment to Uptown, but also Cincinnati and the region. So we've embarked on this innovation district concept that's really taken off throughout the country. And you see University of Cincinnati jumped in a big way. And as Amber said, they occupy the Digital Futures office building here and also the 1819 Innovation Hub, which is the old Sears building. And we are actively working with developers to build out the rest of it. This is a long-term vision. It doesn't happen overnight, particularly in today's commercial environment where you have high costs and high interest rates. It's a challenging environment, but that's the benefit of having a group like ours involved, is because we have the patience to get it right. And then, as Amber mentioned, the NIOSH, the National Institute of Occupational and Safety and Health Federal Research Facility, will take this entire block, and we're hoping they get started this year. When it's fully built out, it'll be, we hope to bring about 8,000 jobs created and retained, and adding about 2.5 million square feet of space. That's a tremendous opportunity for the area and for the economy. So big plans, and we're well on our way.
And so with NIOSH, when I was working at the University of Cincinnati, I worked in the environmental health department, in
Yes.
the Department of Occupational Safety and Health, right? And we were charged to do listening sessions about where they would do that project. And so it's interesting to see that it's finally coming
Yeah.
into play, because that was like 2005, 2006.
Right.
And they were looking at off of Paddock Road in Texas area.
Yeah.
They were looking at that location, and then even kind of expanding on where EPA is now over in that way.
Right.
But that was why it was critical for that MLK to get done as well. And there were other areas outside of Cincinnati that were vying for NIOSH to move totally out of Cincinnati. So I'm glad that they were committed to staying in Cincinnati, and that was my first choice personally, was
Yeah.
to do that, because it just made sense, right?
Yeah.
But they needed that interchange in order for that to happen. So
That's right.
highway exits spur development.
No doubt. And you want to make sure it's quality
Yes.
development that brings jobs. And that's really what we set out to do. And you bring a good point with the NIOSH facility. They had been looking, for years to find a large enough footprint that they needed. And they wanted to be near the university because they share faculty and research projects and et cetera. So it was really important, but it was very difficult because we're so built out here. So the interchange just opened up this opportunity, and we were able to assemble the land. So they can't get here fast enough. We're anxious for them to start moving dirt.
Yes. Go ahead, Ambrose.
When you talk about bringing 8,000 jobs and these projects involving so much construction and redevelopment and what have you, is there how much of that labor is supplied locally? Is it companies coming in from out of town, or is it Cincinnati or Hamilton County based labor force?
Well, labor force on the construction end has primarily been here from the area. However, there'll be certain trades that come in from the exterior, but our exterior of the market, But our Web Ventures works very closely, and when there are opportunities to add jobs to the force, that they first try to find neighborhood and around the area, and then a wider ring as they go out. It's difficult work because not everyone wants to be in construction. Not everybody wants to be out in the cold or, in 100-degree weather. But that's part of what Web Ventures does, is really talk to people realistically about, is this an opportunity for you, a career opportunity? Because that's really what we're trying to do. So we've had some success. Now, this is the first major test, this building here. And then the university is the lease, has the lease on the building. And so the university then worked with Web Ventures to try to fill open positions, or at least, they're constrained by the state employment system and how they have to advertise for jobs and so forth. But they do work with Web and let them know what jobs are available, and then make sure that gets communicated out, so people aren't missing opportunities, I guess is a better way to say it.
Right.
But, then there was a second office building, and the same model for that. And then the developer's getting close. That was finished last year, and so they're getting close to signing some leases. So then Web will work with those tenants for the permanent jobs. So it's two sides, the construction, which is, we really have a robust system there. And then the permanent jobs is we're just getting off the ground now with these two projects.
So I would like to add, when you're in that economic inclusion, doing that economic inclusion work, it's a lot of listening to what the community wants, their expectations, as well as what types of needs. So, like in the digital futures, they have an idea of the types of businesses or size of businesses that they would like to lease to. So, what are those businesses? What are the workforce needs? And so, what Web Ventures does is then they kind of develop this informal pool of workforce or connections with those institutions or agencies or individuals who are in those spaces, so that when an employer says, "Hey," and this happens a lot, we don't have anybody with that skill set that we need, right? And a lot of times they just didn't look, honestly, and don't care. They're doing it because it's a mandate. So this is the importance of having these inclusion goals on this project. And it's up to the economic inclusion consultant to identify that. So a lot of times you end up creating these workforce pools. Um, you have to do some screening. So you're like a teacher. You have all these different hats that you wear. Is more than just monitoring what's going on a spreadsheet. And then you encourage the employers, the businesses that will be moving in, the small businesses, like, hey, have you thought about this resource to help your workforce, for the long term, and connecting them to those resources. So
Yeah,
that's
and
kind of how.
that's a great ad, Amber, honestly, because one of the things that Web will do is, and they heard this early on from some minority and women-owned companies, is like, oh, we're not even going to bother to bid because we're not going to get selected, right? So Web is sort of like a matchmaker. And so, yeah, if they need a capacity at X and you're down here in your capacity or your bonding, um, ability. So you're not ready for that, but we're going to get you ready. And so then they work with the companies and they take them through a process, informal, to be honest with you. But we also have a contract with the Alloy Development Company that does small business consulting work. And then they'll go through that group to help them do a business plan, prepare to go out and get financing or help with getting bonding and so forth. So it's really an integrated approach. And it's really the boots on the ground that Web provides, that if we didn't have them, all we could do honestly would just be have mandates, as Amber said. They're really the ingredient that really moves the needle.
Yes, Eric.
Yeah, just fascinating, and thank you. And such amazing projects. So I guess I'm wondering, what would your advice, wisdom be if I'm a neighborhood, or I serve a collection of neighborhoods like you do, or maybe I work in a town? What would be some key, 2, 3 takeaways? If I'm starting out, what would you advise me?
Well, several things, honestly. I mean, you have to have capital to invest in to transform an area. If you're looking to transform an area or a site, at any scale, whether it's a small site or a large site, you either need some public financing to get site control, or you need maybe anchor institutions like we have to come forward and create a fund for you. So that would be one thing. The other would be to really, if that's not feasible, or if it's more long range or aspirational, the key is to start with a vision. You have to engage the community. You have to hear what people are thinking and what they would like to see in an area. But also, you have to be realistic in what's your market niche, what is your strength, what can be sustainable. And that's one of the things that we did, because we are so strong here in bioscience and tech training with UC and Cincinnati State. It really made sense for us to embark on an innovation district concept. But I think every community has their strengths, and you should play to those strengths.
That's
And
excellent
then,
advice. Thank you.
and then I have a couple other, I don't want to bore you with too many pictures, but this
Oh, no,
is
you're fine.
this is a rendering of the Digital Futures Complex. This is the UC Digital Futures program here, where they bring students and they do a lot of multidiscipline collaborations, and they have labs. For instance, they have a drone lab there. They have a future mobility lab, and it's very interesting space. This is the spec office building that the developer built. And that's where we're trying to attract companies that want to be in this area to take advantage of partnerships with UC or Children's Hospital or the other institutions here. That's the one where it was finished last year, and they're zeroing in on some leases. Hopefully we'll get that building leased up. The NIOSH, we already talked about that. The Southwest quadrant, we call these quadrants. That's why we name it. That's another that we think that might be good for maybe bioscience companies. We're not sure yet. We've just finished the acquisition of those parcels late last year, so it's a work in progress. And then on the north, whoops, going the wrong way. On the northeast quadrant, that's a large scale mixed use development that we envision will be done over multiple phases. We're working with the developer there. This one will be further out in the timeline, we feel, because it's a larger site. There's some brownfield remediation funds that we're going after to clean up some areas. But again, this is our vision, and this isn't set in stone. This will evolve as the market evolves and so forth. So
And I'm going to interrupt real quick. So
sure.
for the brownfields, that is a term used that Cincinnati is one of the areas that was a large manufacturing town, still is. And there were manufacturing types of operations in this area. So it can be assumed that the soil got contaminated. And
Yeah.
so it was ruled a brownfield. And even like old military bases were like the first round, the Brocks were areas where they had the same type of contamination. And so you have to do the extra remediation in the soil, make sure it's the right kind of soil for the building. So you have to do extra environmentals, and there is very expensive to do, of course. And so now they're going after funds to help get that cost, once again, minimizing project costs. But that's something they can do in the prep side, and then it makes it even more lucrative or more increases interest for developers to come in and develop the space. I just wanted to kind of give a brief overview of what brownfield is. I knew, but the general public might not know. So
Yeah, I know. When you work in this field, you take advantage.
you're right.
You know, you just feel like everybody knows these acronyms and all these words, but a feature of this, because in an innovation district, and we've studied them throughout the country, and we visited Cortex in St. Louis, we've taken a look at Tech Square in Atlanta, and we've been to Cambridge in near Boston to look at their innovation districts. And one of the key factors is a gathering spot, green space, outdoor places where people run into each other. You know, it's a vibrant area that young talent and employees want to be there. And you can meet people working on different things outside of your field. That's sort of the whole contributing factor to the innovation district concept. So we feel, because there's more room here, that this quadrant is perfect to put a greenway in the middle of it. That will be a great feature. The other thing for me that was very important, it will invite the neighborhood in. Instead of building, you know, a wall of buildings where neighborhood and residential folks around the area don't feel welcome, we wanted a feature that, yes, come on in. We want you to see what's happening here, be a part of it, live here, bike here, walk through here. So we just received some money from the City of Cincinnati that we're going to be doing some schematic drawings for the greenway. This is a shot of it looking south, and you can see walking paths, and it'll connect to the bike trail here in Cincinnati that's very popular. We even think it could be a prototype for wastewater management, and maybe even the EPA could have some kind of project over here. We don't know. We're just thinking big of how this can be activated. And you'll see it'll be right in between buildings. So what we'd like is developers maybe to put something on the ground floor that activates towards this area, so it starts to be a vibrant place. And so that's that. This is aspirational. We, like I said, it's going to take years. We've got to do brownfield remediation, got to get our schematic drawings, but there's a lot of excitement around this greenway. And then real quick, I'm going to just shift away from real estate a little bit and just talk about an important component. You can't just throw up buildings in a district. It needs to be cohesive and have a sense of arrival in some way. And so we are embarking on a wayfinding planning study as we speak. And we do have some signage in Uptown. It's a little tired. It's been there for about 15 or so years. And we're looking to rebrand and maybe even integrate the Cincinnati Innovation District brand in some sort of fashion. Transportation connectivity, we talked about it in the beginning, but we have 46,000 people that live in the Uptown area. We have 75,000 people who work and come in and out every day or most every day here. The zoo is a major tourist attraction, and there's over 2 million visitors to that each year. So transportation, access, and connectivity are a big deal for us. And that's one of the reasons we advocated to the state and the city for the new interchange. So now we're going back to the interchange area. This is it. And trying to implement and design improvements, enhancements that'll make it more pedestrian friendly and bike friendly. So we're in the middle of that planning work now, and we're hopeful that we'll get some traction on that. The other thing is the benefit of partnering with our university is that I mentioned those labs that are in Digital Futures. One of them is the Future Mobility Lab. We were able to partner with them, and they helped us have a series of community engagement sessions last year where they used visualization and other methods. What am I trying to say? The goggles, the virtual reality. I blanked out for a second, where we had our community folks and all of us do a virtual reality look at what the intersection could be. So you could actually feel like you're walking the intersection at different times of the day. So that was really informative. And that is taking our recommendations and bringing them to life and getting feedback. So that was a really neat exercise that we did. And then really that, we do some work in clean and safe as well. So we do a variety of things to make it a world-class district. That's what we're aiming for.
That's a lot.
It is a lot.
I have a question. For that intersection, by it being so busy, has anyone thought about doing a bridge as the walkway or pathway so that they're not having to go across Reading Road and Martin Luther King at all? I mean, directly on the street level as
Yeah,
much?
we looked at that. I don't think the idea is totally dead, but it's such a large span, and there are grade changes that make it really problematic. And part of that interchange, the roadway, is controlled by the state, and then it transitions into city streets. And ODOT doesn't love having those kind of features so close to an interchange exit, and so that's another. But we haven't given up on it totally. It just may not be right there in that area.
Okay. I was just wondering because there's a lot of traffic that's turning. I mean, every time the light changes, that's a good 40 cars turning left,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And turning right at the same time onto Reading Road going northbound and turning to go westward on Martin Luther King at the same time. So you have two different intersections moving at the same time at all times. So I was
Yeah.
just wondering.
Yeah. It's a good question.
Well, do you all have any other questions, comments?
Not offhand. I see that we're almost at our time. We're just about at the time, but this is it's really insightful in terms of the sort of the scale of the development. As you can see from some of my questions, the thought about the participation of local individuals and companies, and how they can really participate and grow from just the development itself, and then
He just froze. I don't think he realized he froze. So, but he was just speaking on the participation throughout, the whole process. And as you see, in the planning where we always say, look at stuff that's being introduced 20 years ago, because that's where the planning really starts. It's not just
Right. That's so true.
when
That
you
is
start
so
seeing,
true.
that's not when they start digging in the dirt, right? You
Right.
acquired
Right.
properties long before you actually started developing them. So it's very important to go as a community members to go to your community meetings and the public information meetings about concepts and projects, so you know what's going on. So that is just awesome. Ambrose, are you back?
yes, I can
Yes.
hear you all the whole
Yeah, you
time. Can you hear me
froze.
now?
Oh yeah, no, we couldn't hear you. You froze.
Well, you finished it pretty
Oh,
well
okay.
there.
That's what happens when you work together a long time. You can
Yeah,
finish
I,
each
I was
other.
just gonna end with that. I could see where we could have some follow-up sessions here with Beth, talking about similar to what you were just saying of how can the community, and when do they become engaged? What can they do to prepare, to participate or take advantage of the opportunities, the full range, the full spectrum of participation. Um, I think this provides a good opportunity for us to talk about that, and maybe that's something to help build the capacity of the community to do. So,
Yes.
Yeah.
So one
I
of
would
the
welcome
areas,
that.
oh, good, because one of our areas is resilient communities. So helping to build those resilient communities from the community level up, not from the development down. And so that's some of the work that we have begun to formalize. All of us have kind of been doing it on a small scale, but we say, hey, we need to do this on a larger scale in a
Yeah.
more coordinated way. So I will be following up to get on your calendar for that and see what other needs that you have and web ventures have that we can assist with. And I'm hoping to get them on soon to talk about more about the economic inclusion space.
Yeah.
So they did agree, we just have to get a date. So they're going to have IC Williams come on to also talk about the Spence Bridge project and how that is impacting not only Cincinnati and Northern Kentucky, but is really on a national level, really impacting the freight system nationally. For those of you who don't know, that part of I-75/71, because it's joined at that point, is a major artery for freight transportation. So whenever, like one time we had a bad crash and a fire when the bridge was shut down for a month, and that traffic was horrendous. But whenever something happens, you see all the trucks instantly, and then you realize how much really comes through that intersection. But that is a major connector, whether you're going east, west, or north, south, in the overall freight system. So that is a major to do. So I'm glad that that's finally happening too. That's been
Yeah.
20 years in the works, trying to get the
At
government
least.
egos to agree,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we had two different parties, at the hem of each state. So it was, I'm not going to agree because you said the sky's blue and we can see the sky's blue, but I'm going to say it's green because you said it was blue. I mean, it was that kind of dynamic. It's like you all, everybody benefits. It's nonpartisan. Just get it done already, right? It's how you feel. So I'm glad that it's finally going to happen and has started out actually. And Web Ventures, you know, to your point, Eric, when we were talking before, and Ambrose, they are really working to with businesses now to get their capacity up because a lot of times they have the right skill set, but they don't have the capacity to work at that volume. And so you do teaming agreements, getting two different companies to work together. You do formal joint ventures, or you help that individual company to get prepared to be able to be in position to be able to handle the work at the right time and the bonding and all that. So that's a lot of the behind the scenes back office things that economic inclusion consultants do so that the project can get done hopefully before time and under budget and still meet all the inclusion goals. So that's kind of how that economic inclusion consultant works. So without further ado, I'd just like to say thank you. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. I go through that area almost daily. So it's good to see, you know, and I do remember how it used to look.
Yeah,
And
good.
I remember all the neighborhood business district meetings, you know, went
Yeah.
to trying to get them organized and all that. But it's just nice to see that actually come to be. Um, and then also, I just think of Eric, to your point, when you're talking about where can a small town or community work. I think of the Main Street facade building, same type of thing. It was 3 blocks of dilapidated buildings, people getting high, people drug dealing, homeless. I mean, it was everything going on. And to this day, it is for over 30 years, it got transformed into a vibrant entertainment district, and it still functions like that. And small businesses is the key for that area. So that is a true revitalization of a neighborhood business district on a neighborhood scale, even though they get traffic from the Reds games, the Bengals games, the plays at the Aronoff, people just coming down in the downtown area to eat and live and what have you. So, but that is an example of how you can still, in the midst of a big development area, still have that small community feel and vibrancy and still support the local small business mom and pop shops as well. It's not an either or. They can coexist. So thank you again for joining us. And this concludes our March 21st edition of CED Office Hour Live, where the illustrious Beth Robinson of Uptown Consortium took some time out of her schedule to tell us about the great things that they are doing in community and economic development. Thank you and have a great afternoon. And next week we will have Russ Harrison from the Avondale Development Corp, which is fostering on that one of the 5 neighborhoods of Avondale.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.